Okay, I think we are live. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Casey. We're just going to wait for a minute for people to join us. I always just like to make sure that people can hear us, which is always nice when you're doing a Facebook Live, that people can hear us. And I'm going to switch this to gallery view if I can. So if people are watching, my request is that somebody say, we can hear you. Number one. And number two, I actually would love if you guys want to just share maybe one word that sums up what you're feeling right now or what today has been like for you. Maybe we could start that off. Casey, what's one word to summarize your day?
Today has been focused and productive. That's not one word, but it's been
But
productive.
together it gives a whole vibe.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Focus and productive, that's good.
Yeah.
Today from me, all right, good. Jennifer said we can hear you. Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see what my word, I should have thought of my own word before I asked the question, but yeah, I'm gonna, first, the word gray is in my mind because it's been cloudy here and quite cold, and I'm just missing a little sunshine on my face. So I'll say a little gray, but not in a bad, gray is not a bad thing. It's one of my favorite colors, but it's just kind of what I'm feeling today. Busy. Jennifer says busy.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you guys. Feel free to share. We'll get started in just a moment. I know there's always a lag too with Facebook. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to those of you who are watching. Thank you to Casey for joining me on Facebook today. This is a real treat for me. And we've been on each other's podcasts and we got to meet in person in Seattle a couple of years ago. But so I really am grateful to spend this time with you today.
Yeah, we're friends. We're friends now.
We are friends. Yeah, I love it. I love having friends all over the country, and yeah, it's nice. It's nice. And a huge fan of your work as well. So let's take a few minutes just to introduce this conversation. I want to formally introduce you. I'll take a minute to introduce myself because this group, there's so many new people joining Tilt Together group. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Debbie Reber and I'm the founder of Tilt Parenting. This is my little Facebook community here. And I'm the author of a book called Differently Wired, Raising an Exceptional Child in a Conventional World. And I will just share that this is kind of a crazy special week for me, but I have a membership community called the Differently Wired Club. The doors are open for that this week. So if that's something you're interested in, you can scroll through and you'll find some posts about that. And I am really happy to be joined by Casey O'Rourke. And I know actually a lot of you are familiar with Casey because when I shared this event happening, I got comments like, oh, you two together, I'm so excited. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Casey's work, I'm going to just fill you in. And I have a little short bio here. So Casey is a positive discipline trainer and parent coach. She hosts the popular parenting podcast, Joyful Courage. For the last 20 years, Casey has worked with families as an educator and coach to broaden perspectives on parenthood, behavior, and relationships between parents and children. She also incidentally wrote a fantastic book called Joyful Courage, Calming the Drama and Taking Control of Your Parenting Journey. Casey's been on the Tilt podcast twice. The last conversation was about Casey's book, which I really loved, and I will include links to both those conversations below in the threads after this live if you want to check them out. And I also want to share that Casey has a special event that is starting on Monday, the 1st of February. It's called Parenting for a Brave New World. She's got 5 phenomenal guests talking about the baggage that we're kind of all carrying through from 2020, remote learning challenges, adolescent health and well-being, social justice parenting, financial struggles, and self/soul care deficiencies. So is there anything else that you want viewers to know about your event before we get into our combo?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Debbie, for sharing me with your community. I know that you care deeply about the people that you serve. And so it's an honor to be here. Um, and I know I often have people joining in my community who are coming directly from your space. So I know that we do have some overlap, which makes me happy too. The Brave New World Summit is really just, I've been doing summits. I did a lot of summits last year focused on different pain points of parenting teenagers. I have two teens, a 15-year-old, and my daughter just turned 18 last week, which is so weird and amazing. And, the teen years have brought with them so many unexpected twists and turns. We deal with anxiety in our house and some depression, and like mental health is top of mind. And then this summit, instead of picking like one topic, there's kind of this umbrella, because I don't know about all of you, but I definitely was coming into 2021, both eyes wide open of like, just because we're turning the calendar doesn't mean everything goes away, but also holding this hopefulness of, okay, we've spent this year in reactivity to all of these things, which I know your community is well practiced in navigating unexpected turns of events and life unfolding. And I think the rest of the world really got to deep dive into that. And so moving into 2021, knowing what we know and being who we are, how can we continue to be with what's unfolding, but really be in the influence of how we're experiencing it? I think that, whether it's finding out, that our kids learn differently, or there's a mental health challenge, or, I mean, my family this last year had a cancer diagnosis inside of it, and nothing we saw coming. And I think there's that a lot can be said for using the tools that you and I, with our positive discipline background and our parenting background, we talk about a lot, and using those tools to take care of ourselves and to really recognize how much power we have inside the experiences and the events that are continuing to show up. So that's what the summit's really about. I mean, there's all those topics you talk about, and at the end of the day, it's really how we be inside of all of these things that are pulling at us and calling to us in a way that is forwarding, that's grounded, and that's, the most effective and helpful for our kids and our families. So, yeah.
I love the language of how we be. That's awesome. And I just really, I just appreciate your vulnerability in the way you just show up. I'm in your Facebook group for parents of teens, and I've got a teen as well, and I just really I gravitate. I'm also a big fan of positive discipline. I did the positive discipline training program this summer, and I'm a big fan of that approach and philosophy for parenting. But also you as a resource, just for me personally, I'll say I really have gravitated towards what you share.
Thank you.
And you really do, you put it out there in a way that really helps parents feel that they're not alone in what they're going through, and normalizes all of the hard stuff. And that's just such a gift,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a great mentor, and she does a lot of transformation trainings for women. And one of the things that she does when she prompts a circle of women to step into vulnerability is this one line that I love and I use, which is, what's happening in the individual is happening in the collective. And I happen to be someone who's an external processor and extroverted, and I love having a microphone and let me speak to the masses. And I feel like, because of all those things and my personal experiences, I have a responsibility to be transparent. And I'm grateful that I'm not an introvert, that I'm not feeling that call as someone who doesn't enjoy being on stage and sharing. And I'm really grateful to my family for being willing to allow me to share and giving me permission. But yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, We all benefit from that. So I'm just gonna, if you guys see me looking over here, it's because this is where I'm seeing what's happening on Facebook Live. So if you're watching this and you have a question for Casey, you can leave things in the comments, and we'll try to get through some of those. But one of the things that we're talking about today is like what it takes to actually navigate the challenges that we're facing. We're all kind of going through our own unique journeys right now, and reconciling this year that we've had and still what's to come. And you have, you know, again, you've shared this very openly in your community. You've had a really challenging year. And so I would love if you could just tell us a little bit about what, you know, as much as you want to share about what your year has entailed, but also how it's kind of, how you've been able to rely on the, you know, the tools that you have to navigate it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, coming into 2020, we were pretty immersed in my oldest's mental health spin out that was happening. She, last fall of 2019, had just reached a peak of anxiety and had decided to drop out of school, which, I mean, talk about the internal journey, right? The conditioning for education and what it should look like runs deep inside of me. And as open-minded as I think I am, as we think we are, right? It's when our narrative gets, you know, pushed against that we realize, like, oh, how open-minded am I? Turns out I'm a little rigid around this one thing. But she really, you know, I mean, there's so much there. And by the time we came into 2020, I was in pretty good acceptance around the idea that she was just going to have this alternative experience, and I was going to get to, you know, take lots of deep breaths and trust, really lean into trust with her. And she started to make, you know, she started kind of come out of her own, it wasn't really a fog, but it was definitely a period of time, which from the outside looking in looked like she was doing nothing. But her experience was she was in survival. And we started to find some resources, and she and I actually began a DBT program, which was a godsend. DBT is dialectic behavioral therapy. And when done with fidelity, it's both an hour-and-a-half long workshop for a caregiver and a teen. And the teen also has another hour of support with a DBT therapist. And we have a great community of therapists that run this program here locally where I am. And that we started that, and the very next week, her dad had been dealing with a lot of chronic pain, and there was kind of a mystery of what was going on. Nothing was showing up in x-rays, and it all of a sudden in March, it got like drastically worse, and he started to lose feeling in his legs. And I mean, finally the insurance was like, okay, you can have an MRI. And so it was April 4th, he went in for an MRI. Rowan, my daughter, took him, and the technician got a look at what was happening on his spine and saw a massive tumor that had nearly severed his spine. And he said, you need to go directly to the ER. Rowan took him to the ER. COVID, meanwhile, was already underway, so she couldn't go in with him, which, I mean, she's not really the best support person at this point, but she dropped him off. Then I got a call, and then we had to go. I took him down to Seattle. We live in Bellingham, Washington. And they said, you need to go to Seattle. You need to go to the best spine surgeon possible. And the very next day, he had a 6-hour surgery that took this tumor off of the top of his spine. And then a couple weeks later, we found out that the tumor was multiple myeloma, which is a cancer that lives in blood plasma that lives inside of the bone marrow. So rather than like one organ being affected by cancer, it was all over his body. And I, of course, well, not of course, but I'm here to say that I made the huge mistake of Googling it, because I'd never heard of multiple myeloma. I Google it, and it's like Google hasn't caught up to the research. So it was grim, you know, and super scary. And, you know, I have this amazing family, and my stepmom is large and in charge when it's a crisis. And she was just like, here's what you got to do. You got to call Cancer Care Association, Cancer Care Alliance. I've been going there all year. And you got to say, we need an appointment. You don't wait for the doctor to figure it out. You do it. And so that's what I did. And that began, you know, what has been a 10-month journey, I think, of him being in treatment that lasted through the summer. And then this fall, one of the treatments is a stem cell transplant, which is like, I've never cared about science. And oh my gosh, I'm the biggest fan now of science and what people figured out how to do. You know, they took the blood out of his body, put it in this crazy centrifuge, spun it really fast to take the stem cells out. And then he had a huge dose of chemo, which killed, you know, just like a forest fire, right? Killed the immune system. And then they put these stem cells back in. And he's like, we called him New Baby Ben because he had no immunity in October. And and he's slowly growing that back. And we find out this week, actually, he just had a PET scan yesterday and a bone marrow biopsy on Friday. And we'll find out, you know, how effective this treatment that he's been doing has been. But I started writing about it in like a friend of mine says, oh, you know, a great place to share with people is there's this site called Caring Bridge, and it's designed for like disaster, how to keep your people informed. And so I started writing every couple of weeks just about our experience. And it just felt, you know, it was interesting for me as I talked to people and shared my experience, and really was in the question, even just Sunday, I'm constantly in this question of, am I okay? Am I feeling a bunch of stuff, or am I okay? I think I'm okay. And it's fascinating how I want to second guess that. A lot of the time when I'm talking to someone who clearly wouldn't be okay if they were in my shoes, because they can barely handle me sharing my experience. But I really attribute a lot of it. I mean, I feel like I've been training for this. You know, I feel like the work that I've done with parents, I focus a lot on personal growth and the opportunity to be with whatever unfolds. Positive discipline was a total catalyst for that, and moved me in that direction. As I got better and better at learning the material of positive discipline, it became more and more obvious that I had a lot of things to unpack about my conditioning and my experiences and who I was. And I think all of that has really trained me up to be with what has been, you know, hands down the most challenging year, and longer if you include my daughter's stuff, of my life. And I'm pretty proud of how I've handled it, and how naturally it comes to me to find gratitude and see everything that is possible because of all of this crazy shit that's happened. Like our family is tight right now. We had to live for 2 months in Seattle, Ben and I, and my 2 teenage children were home alone for 2 months, and they were you know, it was fantastic. I mean, nobody wants this to be how it is, but there was a little bit of an adjustment period those first couple of weeks. And then, you know, getting food, feeding themselves. My son started high school, remote learning high school, and he's navigated, you know, I think it's kind of been a gift, because I tend to be a little bit controlling, and I don't have the bandwidth to be that controlling anymore. So I think it's also a huge gift, you know, for my kids to kind of feel me pull back, simply because I can't be all the things all the time. And it's a good thing.
Wow.
Yeah, big.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It is big. I mean, I've been following your story, as you know, you have been sharing this, and it's a lot to navigate. And of course, we're just, you know, I think about you all the time, and I'm just, you know, hoping for the best possible outcome for your whole family as you navigate this. And lots of little things that we can touch upon. First of all, with regards to your daughter, I want viewers to know that you did a fantastic podcast episode on the Joyful Courage podcast, where you guys had this beautiful conversation. I listened to it. I was fascinated by it. And can you tell us a little bit about that episode?
Yeah, definitely. So I invited her to come on. And I should say too, for the last, I don't know, 8 months or so, she's been working with me in my business. And so I have another team member who's really been a mentor for her and is teaching her about systems and, social media strategy. And she has slowly, the curtain has been pulled back around what I actually do.
Mhm.
And I asked her if she'd come and be a guest, because I have permission, and I talk about my experience with her with, not all the details, but it's like you said, I can't not be transparent. I can't show up and not say I'm in it with you.
Mhm.
And so I asked her if she'd come on. She had gotten to just, it was after the time we spent in Seattle. She was really doing so well. And she agreed. And so I wrote out an outline and I said, anything you don't want to speak into, I won't ask. So let me know. And you can make some notes if that helps you feel more comfortable. And I was floored by what she brought to that conversation. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how explicit she would get about her experience. And it was more than I could have hoped it to be, that conversation. Both like, this is a great podcast, as well as like my mama heart just feeling like, wow, really recognizing how far she's come and how far we've come. And, I think everybody can identify with being in the fire versus looking back at how hot the fire was.
Mhm.
It's really nice to be in a new place with her and just how she's navigating the world.
Mhm.
So that was pretty
Yeah.
special.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that came through. And what I appreciated about it so much, as the parent of a differently wired teenager, and this community as parents of differently wired kids, is I think we are always kind of confronting this idea that this journey is not the journey I expected.
Yeah.
This looks different, and we are regularly confronted with that reality. And you shared it so openly, and just what it actually looks like to kind of move through that, because there were lots of twists and turns in your daughter's journey. And hearing how you navigated that, how you navigated it together. She shares how she felt while you were responding in this way. And anyway, it was just great.
Yeah.
So I
She
really
was very
encourage.
honest.
Yeah, it was great.
She doesn't hold back. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's so important, right? I mean, especially for people like you and I who, share philosophies and tips and tools and strategies, or, as parents, we read books and we listen to podcasts and it's like, okay, great. But what does this actually look like in real life? And that's, something that drives my sharing is it's messy. It's not like, okay, here you, and you all know this. I mean, I know I'm speaking to the choir here, but it would be so lovely if there was like, okay, here's the formula. Here's how here's how you deal with that. And it's really clean and tidy. And there's a little bow at the end, but that's just not, I mean, regardless of how your kids are wired, that's just not, humans are messy. Humans are really messy. And I think it's important to remember that and to not judge ourselves based on the messiness. If we use these outlying results and outcomes as, am I a good mom? Well, my kid dropped out of school, got her GED, and after her, not, like a month into her junior year, that doesn't feel like an indicator of like, I'm a great mom. But when I can dig in and explore and express what it was like to allow the unfolding of this journey for my daughter, and to be in it and to be with it and to not grasp for control, even though I wanted to and I tried to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, like I kicked some ass at the parenting game,
Mm-hmm.
in the last year. And I'm grateful, and I tell her all the time, you make me a better parent coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So
Yeah.
good. And so, right now, this is something I'm sharing a lot with, parents on the podcast or in this group. I'm always trying to encourage parents to lower the bar, um, to especially now in this time of COVID with remote learning. And, so many parents are watching their kids' grades slip. They're watching assignments not get turned in. They're watching or realizing that their kids are not attending to their Zoom classes at all, whatever's going on. And so our instinct is often to try to kind of control that, and fix it or get our kids back on track. And so, you've been talking about surrendering to the
Mhm.
circumstances as they unfolded. For parents who are watching this who could use a little guidance in how to better surrender, what thoughts do you have for them?
Well, I think it's really tricky because, um, I'm still in the question of, should I have pushed harder? Like, I
Mhm.
don't want anyone to watch and listen and think like that I'm super confident in how I navigated everything, because time will tell. Right? Time will tell. She will tell me in 10 years, mom, you
Yeah.
shouldn't have let me do that. Or mom, that was the biggest gift you could have given me. But I think especially with the remote learning, I mean, I think that there is some pieces, and this comes up beautifully in one of the conversations that I have in the summit with Jessica Leahy. We talk about remote learning, and it feels like all the professionals get like the list, the word is out that our kids' mental health is top priority right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we've taken all of the things that, not all of our kids, but most of our kids, the exciting parts of school are walking in the halls and seeing friends and moving between classes and just the little pieces of the day that happen when you're in the school building. And we've ripped all of that away, understandably. And all they're left with is the teaching and the learning. And the
Mhm.
teaching, teachers have not been trained to create engaging curriculum via Zoom. And so they're doing the best they can. And our kids are, doing the best they can. And I think that one of the places to go when we talk about surrender is first, letting go of the experience that our kids are having. I think a lot of parents feel a lot of guilt, like we feel so bad for our kids about like, this isn't, especially our older kids who maybe are missing out on certain kind of rites of passage. But let's let go of that. First of all, everybody is having the same experience. It's not like we live in this little bubble where shit's going down and our kids are falling behind and everybody else is having this regular, normal experience. That is not what's happening. This
Mhm.
is a collective unfolding. And so really being with that and trusting, this is positive discipline, trusting in the relationship that you're creating and nurturing with your kids, using that relationship so that you can have really powerful conversations around like, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve in school? When we do look at the portal, which I recommend not looking at the portal very often, um,
Mhm.
it's too much information. But when you look at how you're doing, what do you want to see, and start to have the conversations that are transferring that energetic responsibility as much as is appropriate for your child based on age and ability. And you are the experts on your kids, but where can you find some energetic responsibility that you're holding tight to that you can hand over to your child? And then the surrender comes with trusting that they can do something with it. And it might be, you might need to scaffold, right? Like, okay, if our kids, set some goals for themselves, then that's great. And then the next question is, what do you need? What are some things that you want to put into place, or that I can help you put into place to achieve those goals? And I think a lot of us can own, that we might have been doing a little bit too much for our kids. And so rather than just like, I'm not going to do anything, it becomes this opportunity to say, I've really driven this ship. And there's a lot of messaging there too, right? There's a lot of messaging about how capable we think our kids are when we're doing so much for them. So owning that, and then really handing it over, asking, what do you need from me? What would support you? I did a podcast with my son a couple weeks after Rowan's podcast, and he's 15, and he's typical 15-year-old. And he's plugging away. He's pretty easygoing. I'm thankful. I've got the one, and then the opposite temperament of the other one. But when we looked at his grades, and he had, not great marks in computer literacy, which he was like, oh, that's going to be easy. I said, well, so tell me about that. Tell me about that C, like what are you doing to earn a C? And he was like, well, that class is super boring. And that's when I tend to turn on a show.
Fair.
And I said, okay, it makes sense. And I said, well, what would help you? And he was like, well, I probably shouldn't watch, a show on my other computer while I'm in that class. I said, okay, great. So what's going to help you? Right. Because it's all great to say, well, this is what I'm going to do. And he said, I think you should make it so that computer's Wi-Fi doesn't turn on until after 2. And I was like, okay, I can do that. Thank you, Xfinity Wi-Fi. I can do that. I can be in control of that. And he asked for what he needed, and I made the adjustment. And I haven't circled back on that one, honestly, but I'll get there and see how computer literacy is going for him. Yeah. But really being in the surrender is like being in the remembering that our kids are, as much as we want to create the experience for them so that they have all the opportunities, possible, there is something to be said for allowing them to be in the creation of their experience too, sharing that power.
I don't remember who I was talking to about this, so I can't attribute this thought to properly, but it might have been Michelle Borba, but we were just talking about what our kids need during this time, and the idea was that what they're going to remember from this time was how we were there for them, how we showed up for them. So I really like that story too, of just kind of being curious and asking those questions and being open, right, to their input, and it's respectful, and it's a very positive, disciplined approach, which is, which sometimes takes a long time, right? These aren't quick fixes too. One of the questions that I got ahead of time before we jumped on was with regards to schoolwork. And a lot of parents feel like the only leverage they have, I'm using air quotes for leverage, is, taking away screen time or having these repercussions for schoolwork not being completed, etc. So this is one example that you just shared of a more positive discipline approach to schoolwork that isn't really going the way you would hope during remote learning. Do you have any other strategies or just things that parents can think about as they negotiate their kids' school life with them?
Yeah, I think that I so get the screen leverage that has become, I don't know of anyone who hasn't at least threatened, I'm going to take your screen if you don't do XYZ. Like, it's such a quick fix, right? It's one of those very short-term tools that seem to be effective in the moment. But, what do we really want? I think that that's an important question. And if what we really want is for our kids to be learning, then we have to get under the surface and really start to explore what the barriers are and problem solve the barriers. Right. And it's even easy to think, well, the barrier is they've got this phone. And so because of the phone, they don't want to do any schoolwork. And I would challenge that and say, the phone is a great way to distract and avoid whatever's happening for them and how they interact with school. So I would say, slice it thinner, right? Take a few steps back and get really curious about what their experience is right now with school, and listen, and don't try to talk them out of it, and don't make it wrong. Just be a listener. I think it's really important also to, again, own it when I was raised in a family where school was top number one priority. And it was like tied in with character, and fortunately for me, I was pretty easygoing. I didn't push back too hard, and I didn't have a lot of challenges academically. So, when my dad said, you need to have a 3.0 if you're going to drive that car, I was like, great. And I got a 3.0, never any better, never any worse, because I wanted to drive the car. And so I think it's really important for parents to find out what their kids' experiences are with school and figure out where the barriers are. I love Ross Green's work, right? It's not that they won't, it's that they can't. And getting really curious with them about what are their goals? What do they want to accomplish? And if the answer is, I don't really care, okay, so what do you imagine when you see yourself as a grown-up? What do you imagine? What are you interested in? How do you, and just allow it, and this is important, not having a conversation like this, like, I'm going to trap them into this frame of mind so that they will be like, oh, thanks, mom. Now I'm going to really focus hard on school. Like, if you go in with that agenda, you're screwed. But instead, like, really practice being curious and really, be in a place of wanting to learn more about your kid through these questions. And it's like an energetic side by side, like, what does the future look like? Who do you know that didn't finish school? Right. And even as I say this and I think about my own experience, I want to just share, anxiety had such a strong grip on my daughter when she was going through dropping out of school, that she couldn't even project into the future. Like, that just would send her into a panic attack. So it was a really interesting, frustrating, irritating, difficult experience, and I say that because I know that, again, it's not like, oh, just be curious and they will come to the, belief that they need to. And it's ongoing, we just have these conversations. And I always come back with, what's going to help you get there? What can I do? What do you need? What's going to help you?
Yeah. And I would say now too, what I'm hearing from so many people, especially, and I know we're talking mostly about older kids, adolescents right now, but a lot of them, they feel like they've lost some of their life. I mean, they have. And so they may not feel as prepared for the future. And so even talking about the future might be paralyzing or spike their anxiety. So I just want to acknowledge that too. But I actually want to ask, because we have, this conversation, it seems like especially talking about future, may feel very geared towards older kids who are closer to launch. But what about for parents who are watching who have younger kids, elementary school age, early middle school? Are we still having this kind of, what would you like to see at the end of the year? How are we framing these conversations surrounding the way that they're showing up for school?
I think it can be pretty similar. Of course, you tweak the language to make it more age appropriate. But I also think that we can loosen up a little bit around our expectations, especially with our younger kids, because they're going to move on. They're going to move on, and, things like reading. If you're a family that reads, just keep reading. Like, let go of the grade that the teacher is giving your child for language arts and read together. right? Look for opportunities to apply math out in the world, right? I think that it's just, the world is upside down right now. It's just upside down right now. And they're going to retain whatever they're going to retain, no matter how rigid you get. And so it's either having the experience of retaining a certain amount of material while also having this frayed relationship with my parent, or having the experience of retaining probably that same amount of information while also feeling accepted, feeling a sense of connection, feeling a sense of mattering from my grown-up, who's also checking in on, the bigger stuff, which is, what is it like right now for you and your friends? And what are your questions about what's happening in the world? And what are your fears, right? Like, it's not how they do in elementary school. I mean, of course, there's the building blocks to everything they're going to learn. But I mean, come on, have you been in an elementary school? How much time, how many minutes are actually spent?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stuff going on that, I just really trust that our kids are going to be okay, especially if they're in a family where everybody's loosened up a bit and is really embracing the idea that connection and relationship is what matters the most right now. Yeah.
I share that optimism with you 100%. And I echo the prioritizing of connection and relationship. I think that's what it's all about. I hope that is the greatest thing that we all get from this time together, is deeper connection and relationship with our kids. Casey, I just want to thank you. This has been such a great conversation. I, again, just so appreciate the way you show up for your community, for your family, for all of us, and share yourself with us. I want to remind people watching about Casey's Parenting for a Brave New World conference. It starts on Monday. And where can people find out more about that?
It starts on Monday. You can find out more at joyfulcourage.com/BNW, Brave New World, BNW. And if you use the code TILT25, you get 25% off the cost. So that's a little special for your community.
That's
also,
so awesome.
I want to highlight too, I know that you all are overwhelmed right now. And for many people, I think signing up for another thing feels like the last thing you want to do. So I just want to highlight that my summits are small. They're only 5 interviews and you get them forever, right? So it's, even if it's not, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, where you're listening to each new interview, it doesn't matter. You get to own them and have them in your parenting library forever. So just know that. And they are such good conversations. I mean, I've applied and integrated things that have come up from every single interview into my life already. So I'm just really, really proud to share this. So that's joyfulcourage.com/BNW and then TILT25 for the discount.
That's so nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'll, after this video is kind of living in the Facebook group, I'll post a link in that as well. And I'm also just going to remind viewers that my membership community, the Differently Wired Club, doors are open through this Friday at midnight. That's the 29th, I believe. And if you're interested in that, you can learn more at tiltparenting.com/club. So thanks to all of you who joined us live. And I hope those of you watching this recording get a lot out of this as well. Such a wonderful conversation. I'm going to let you get on with your day, but thank you again for coming by and chatting with us today.
Thank you for having me. Thanks to everybody for watching. Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.